And yeah, I think what I want students to get out of this course is to just feel like that they can tackle any architectural style that comes their way. And I want people to experience what I've been lucky to experience. And at the end of the day, I think we all want to see our stuff make it to the big screen or the small screen as close as possible to what we've designed. Like that's why we're in it. We want to show our family and friends. We want to take them to the movies and like, look, that's the set that I designed, and look at my name in the credits. So I want to hopefully get students to be able to be somebody that has their design or their set make it to the big screen.
Please welcome our brand new Learn Squared instructor and returning guest, concept designer Nick Stath, to the Learn Squared podcast. And in this episode, we talk in depth about Nick's brand new course, Interior Concept Design, which is available now at learnsquared.com, and how his career and skills as a designer have grown since Nick last jumped on the podcast, and how that experience has been infused into all that he teaches in the course. So let's get to it and hear more from Nick on how to handle, maneuver, and be a valuable asset when working on films, the power of architecture in design, and plenty more. Let's go.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Learn Squared podcast, and delighted to welcome on the brilliant Nick Stath, who joins us again after a few years of being here the first time round. Before we get into the good stuff, firstly, welcome Nick, and if you wouldn't mind, just let everybody know who you are and what you do, for those who are completely new, and also what you've been up to since we last spoke.
Thank you for having me back, Aaron. I can't believe it's already been three years, probably almost 3 years. So I'm a concept designer. I've got an extensive background in architecture, for those that don't know. Combined with my study and working in architectural practice, I've spent probably about a decade in architecture. I've been full-time freelancing as a concept designer since 2020, so getting to almost 6 years. And in that short amount of time, I've been really fortunate to be a part of some pretty cool projects like Alien Romulus, the upcoming Godzilla Kong Supernova, Secret Level, Love, Death and Robots, even the Alien Romulus sequel, and yeah, a bunch of whole other really cool projects.
Just to recap, and I highly recommend everybody to go back and check Nick's first episode. I remember at the time when we did it, I just had this sense of like positivity, because the energy that you had just for the profession that you do was amazing. But just, you could tell like this is a person who just wants to keep growing and essentially loves what they do. But I remember you saying like the journey up to that point wasn't so straightforward, and it wasn't necessarily like always positive for you. So if you just give us a recap on like what that was like at the time, and are you still in that kind of space, or has that completely changed?
Yeah, sure. That's a good one to dive into. So the last time we spoke in 2022, like I was just finishing on Alien Romulus. So it was the career highlight, but I'd only been in the space for about 2.5, 3 years full time. And it seemed like the dream story, and it seemed very easy from an external perspective, but there was a lot of struggles to get to that point. So basically in my architecture career, look, I love architecture. I learned so much of what I know now back in those days, but I got to the point where I was extremely burnt out, and I couldn't visualize myself working in architecture forever. So I got to points where I was, almost having like a mental breakdown, like asking myself, what am I going to do? What's my future going to be? Like, I can't keep doing this forever. And in my architecture days, I was always inspired by film and the architecture in film, like these big, bold visions that inspired me. And they always planted the seed of, something else for me other than just the real world architectural practice. And when I graduated in 2014 in architecture, a good friend of mine, and I mentioned this in the last podcast, he said to me, okay, now that you're working full time as an architect, make sure you don't just go home and watch MasterChef. Make sure, you keep doing your own drawings and your own designs, because at uni, that's what we're taught to do, like have these big visions. So I kept doing that. I started an Instagram back then, maybe in like 2015. Created my own little montages and collages of just these architectural forms and spaces. You know, when I look back at them now, like I kind of frown at them. But I put them on Instagram without any intent other than just having like an online gallery that I could just put things on there. And in 2016, somebody came across that, and that was a VFX studio called Plastic Wax here in Australia, and they wanted me to work on a science fiction series. So I was like blown away that I got this random email from my work getting out there. And I was working in architecture at the time. I asked my bosses if I could take this on. It was only a few weeks, and it just exposed me to, this whole world of concept art and design. And it just got me so excited because somebody was hiring me for my ideas. And to give the short story, after that, I was on such a high, and it gave me, hope for the future of what my career could be. I went on a downward spiral because then I was exposed to the industry and all of these amazing artists. So I started to question myself and my abilities, and I would compare my work to all these other people that I saw, like, big name concept artists. And I was like, my work's terrible. I need to become a painter. So I threw away everything that I knew that brought me to the dance, which was architecture. And because I wasn't good at digital painting and I had no, good fundamentals in that side of things, I just became really negative towards myself. I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. There was no more job offers coming through. And then I felt like I was stuck in architecture forever. So I ended up giving up on drawing for probably 2 years. And it wasn't until 2018 when my partner encouraged me to enter this international fairy tales competition, where you would have to come up with a story and illustrate, 5 drawings. That she helped me pick myself up, enter this competition with no expectation because she thought I had this great idea. Did it, came second internationally, and that was the confidence that gave me to get back into drawing and start working on my portfolio again. And basically, from that point, it reignited the fire. I worked extremely hard at developing a portfolio, lunchtime in the car, before work, after work, late at night, just getting back to what brought me to the dance, which was architecture. And within that 1.5, 2 years of really just focusing on my portfolio, 2020 hits. I get that email 4 years later from the last job offer. Hey, Nick, director loves your work. This is Electric Theatre Collective, a VFX studio, working on a music video with Pharrell Williams. Can you work for us? Thought, this is my calling. I've saved enough money to quit my job. Did it, full steam ahead, and we are where we are now.
Sick. Firstly, thanks for sharing that, and also everyone can check that out in the first episode as well, because you're very open and honest about your journey, your struggles, also your conversations with them as well, which is very, very important. And I'm sure a lot of people have had that experience. I've had that same experience too, particularly that phenomenon where, like, you have this certain skill set, then you enter this new space, and then you almost disregard it because you feel like you have to, so you drop all these bags and you go get these other ones, and then either you figure it out maybe, but then obviously in my case, in your case as well, there's a case of no, you kind of go back to what was originally good and do that as well. So yeah, that was something that was quite relatable, and I guess it's also a point to kind of reiterate is that it's fine as well, right? To kind of go through that. And for yourself, do you feel like you kind of had to go through that looking back now?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, it's an important part of the process. Of course, looking back, you're like, oh, I wish I didn't have to go through all of those years and struggle to get to where I did. But it was just an important part of the journey, because it was just that process that I had to go through to realize that I needed to go back to what I had spent a decade of investing my time into, which was architecture. And you only learn and grow through your mistakes and your struggles. I think that's that's the most important part of the journey, is those struggles, because then it makes you even more appreciative of where you are to this day. And I know we've spoken about this before, and that's why I always like to reflect, and I always like to remind myself of the state of mind that I was in and the work that I was doing and how I felt at that time. So it just makes me feel really happy every day knowing that I went through that struggle, but I'm here today because of that struggle, and I can be grateful for everything that I'm working on at the moment.
So let's do a bit of time traveling, and I think we'll do that throughout this episode. Let's fast forward to today, and right now, as the time of recording, we're on the eve of the launch of your Learn Squared course, Interior Concept Design. We'll definitely get into that and what that journey was like and what you want to teach students. And definitely, I'd love to pick apart what you've been doing in between that time as well, because it's been a good number of years since we spoke. But at that point, when we last spoke, and even around 2020, when you made that breakthrough, you could say, did you see your journey? And this is a loaded question, because from the conversations we've had over the years, whether you saw it as something that you wanted to do or subconsciously, you've always been very open and sharing your point of view and perspective, and then also your process. So, which is obviously very good ingredients for someone who wants to teach. But did you see yourself as somebody who will be here today with a course ready to teach students themselves?
So I probably didn't at the time. The funny thing is, my partner always told me, she's like, one day you're going to be doing a Learn Squared course. I was like, oh, no way. They're not going to ask me to do that. Like, because I did so many Learn Squared courses that helped me get to where I was. But like you said, over the past few years, like, I wanted to become the person that could break the fourth wall, so to speak, on the industry. Because when I was struggling for those 3 to 4 years, I didn't know what a concept artist or a concept designer actually did behind the scenes. And, I was just looking at social media and thinking that I had to just create this beautiful, polished art all the time. And I wanted to become a person that can help inspire others that want to get into this space, and to just, show them what it's like to actually work on a real project. Because I feel like when I started to see those things by working on jobs, it took so much pressure off of myself. Like, I just realized that, people do work in progress drawings. I know it sounds silly, like, to think like that, but if you're starting out and you get onto a big project, like, you can freak out and you can just think that people are just pumping out these beautiful images and these beautiful designs every day, but it's not like that at all. So I feel very grateful and fortunate that I get to share my experiences and reveal what it's like working on a production. And just to travel to last year, I think what really made me realize that maybe this was my calling for the next part of my journey or my chapter was the Concept 101 talk last year, and seeing the response that talk got, and how students would just come up to me and just were saying they were inspired by and just asking me all these questions. Like, it was just an amazing feeling, and it almost gave me a new sense of purpose. Like, the purpose before was to just create selfishly to be a part of films that I want to be a part of and create these amazing designs. But all of a sudden it's like, I can keep doing that, but now I can kind of help people try and experience what I've been fortunate to experience over the years.
Amazing. And I was fortunate enough to attend that talk as well. And it's definitely one that has stuck with me. Purely because 9 times out of 10, when you attend a talk, we're there for the artwork, right? We're there for the process. We're there to see how this amazing artist made this amazing work. And you gave us that. But you preface everything with how you got the gig, and almost gave us like a live narration as to what you were thinking, what was going through your head, which I think was expertly done. And I don't think I've ever experienced that at a talk in particular, especially. And also, it was something that demystified the process. And you mentioned things like imposter syndrome, which maybe we can go out and limit and say everybody who's a creative has experienced that, whether we like to admit it or not. Yeah. But that was one of the things that really stuck out to me. Was that something that you chose to reveal deliberately, or did you feel like you had to? Like, how much of it was strategic? How much was it of I have to kind of like explain this to show how I got there?
Yeah, I think like I'm always talking about, me and my partner are always talking about these things. And we're thinking, what am I going to talk about? Am I just going to show my artwork on the day? Or like, can I go deeper? Like, can I, like, all these people are going to be watching me. Like, I know there's going to be a lot of people that are new to the industry or trying to get into the industry. And it was just brainstorming a lot, like, what's going to help them? Like, rather than me just get up there on stage and be like, look how cool I am. I worked on Alien Romulus. Look how sick my work is. Like, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to take people through that journey of what, in even just putting it on the screen, as you saw, like, what was the first email that I got? Like, it was just from the production designer saying, hey, Nick, love your work. We're doing the new Alien movie. Are you available? And just taking everybody from that journey of making them realize that I freaked out when I got that, and taking them on the roller coaster of emotions, even through the first meeting, how I felt on that too, because that was another important part. Like, before that, I was really content with the work that I was doing and the projects I was working on. I didn't aspire to be on like the biggest blockbuster films or anything like that. But then being on a big film and seeing in the group emails, there's people like Alex Nice and Josh Fears and Matt Savage, Cole Price. Like, I was just, that's when the imposter syndrome kicked in. So I just wanted to, yeah, show everybody like how I was feeling at every email that I got, how I felt during presentations, and at the same time, show the work that I was presenting at specific timestamps of working on the job. So they could experience it both from the email side of things and also then from what I was presenting to the director and the production designer throughout the whole production.
Just a note on imposter syndrome in general. What tips would you give to people when you're faced with it?
The first tip, and because, you know, we all think that we're the only one that feels like that, is realizing that everybody else feels the same way. Like, probably 90% of the time, like 90% of the other artists feel like that. I think it's almost like a part of being a creative person, because what calmed my nerves was speaking to someone like Cole Price, who's a legend, and him having, you know, imposter syndrome on the job with us.
Yeah.
And Matt Savage also like freaking out on the job, not wanting to get fired. And all of a sudden you just realize, hey, we're all in the same boat. But I think the biggest part of advice I could give is really trying to embrace that feeling, but just backing yourself. Like, if you have been approached to work on a project like that, somebody has liked what you have done. So all you can do is just be authentic to yourself and back your design skills and your design thinking. Because at the end of the day, the worst thing that can happen is you get let go off a project, but there's just going to be another one. Like, you're not going to gel with everybody, take the pressure off. Everybody's going to come across an experience where it's going to be negative. And I think if you can just tell yourself those things and just take the pressure off, like, I think you can just ease into a project a lot more easier. I think even hearing, I can't remember who said it. It might have been Emmanuel Shu as well, like on one of his podcasts. Like, he said something like he just embraces that nerves are a part of the process and the project that you're going to be on. When you're starting something new, it's fresh, you're going to be nervous, but just lean into it.
Absolutely true. Have you faced that same kind of feeling on every project since that moment? Because I'm sure that was still the case before that. But it seems like, and obviously I'm reading between the lines, but it seems like that particular project, it was very prominent. Like imposter syndrome, or like that process of like, do I fit in here? How do I even kind of like at least taking all the emotions away and all, like, you know, I guess that the fanfare of like, you got this gig, I still got to turn up and do work, and then you got to kind of like get out of that headspace and just deal with the task. Even since that point and come to those realizations and conclusions, do you still kind of go for the same process?
Yeah, I think like the heaviness of the imposter syndrome has worn off, but I still get nerves on every project, because I think as a creative person, like, if you're really passionate about what you do, like, you're going to put a lot of pressure on yourself to like perform and do the best that you can do. So like I still get that. Like even when I finish a job, I'm like, oh, that wasn't too bad. Like that was fine. And then you can start to feel really confident about yourself. But then you get that email for the next project and you start freaking out again. And you're like, oh my God, I got to do a good job. I got to work those extra hours and make sure I impress the production designer or the director. Like it all just comes back on. And it's just a part of the roller coaster, I think. Like I said, you just gotta lean into it. And yeah, every project I get that feeling. Like even with doing the Learn Squared course, like when that was the offer, I freaked out. I'm like, oh, how am I going to record myself? How am I going to talk? Like I can't do this. Like I just went through the same process by doing that. But again, lean into the nerves, embrace that feeling, and just back yourself because yeah, somebody has approached you for who you are.
Yes, and I think one of the things is like a constant reminding yourself, and this doesn't only apply to, I guess, our profession, but in anything in general. Like the human brain, as brilliant as it is, it's also very naive and also very vulnerable, and it just constantly needs just that reassurance or like a bit of a kick, like just repeat the same things or whatever it needs to be or whatever how your brain works. But yeah, you kind of always need that kind of like refresher, that reminder, that kind of spring clean out, just to kind of reset even and continue. And leaning into the nerves, as abstract and vague as that may sound, that is probably the best way to describe it, at least from my experience as well. Like and one way to maybe look at it is like, if you do feel like the nerves are getting better of you, and it can sound extreme, but just feel like, okay, it's a situation you can't get out of. So what do? You have to lean into it, or you have to kind of like navigate it, and it will never last forever. That's another thing as well. Like it's a finite issue. And then when the nerves are gone, you almost miss it again, thinking, shit, I wish I had that kind of like, that feeling again, because it kind of gives you that kind of purpose. And it does remind me a lot of hearing athletes or people who work in high pressure environments. Like the anxiety levels that they have to deal with is the same. They're faced with this task. It almost, the literal, like, I guess, vegan psychos in a way, because they have that very extreme mindset and they tackle things. An example that I always look back on is like Lewis Hamilton, for example, drives 200 miles an hour every weekend, and it's like nothing to him. But he mentioned but if he's driving around on the streets at normal speed limit, it freaks him out. I guess because of all the variables and all that kind of stuff. And it kind of made me think that maybe it's like, and you mentioned as well, like doing the course, for example, maybe it's like the newness of things, like you overthink things because it's new parameters. You don't know how you're going to kind of like, how you're going to fare in that kind of situation. What process do you go through? And do you even get into situations where you do find yourself overthinking things?
Yeah, I think so. Like I think I've always been an overthinker, which I've gotten better at over the years. And I find I just go back to like things that I've learned from like other tutorials or podcasts that I've listened to. And that's why they're important to listen to. Is like you can sometimes try and overcomplicate things. And something that's always in my head, actually, speaking of that, is I always think back to one of Jama's courses where he was just like, simple is good, simple is best.
Yeah.
And like I just try and simplify things so I don't, and that like doesn't apply just to design. Like I just think of that in every aspect of what we do. Simplify things. Things aren't as bad as what they seem. Like, take the pressure off so that you don't overthink. Yeah.
Simplification is an art form unto itself, and I'd love to hear your take on it as well. It's something that I think you either just get generally with more mileage or maybe even age as well, because you just want things to happen not quicker but more painlessly, so you can just focus on the good stuff. But I think also with art as well, whether it's, and I hear this in musicians, even like the any kind of craft or any kind of vocation, like cooking is another one. We were speaking about that before offline, and obviously our field as well, visual. There's always clutter. There's always too much noise, whether it's like flavors or sounds or even just visual noise, and you just want to kind of like harmonize everything and just make things clear, and then just finding out how to simplify things. And the more I hear stuff is like, one example that really always sticks with me that makes more sense to me is like these audio production, specifically audio mixing. And a lot of these professionals, there's some great resources online. A lot of these professionals, these people who won Grammys and all sorts of Oscars and what have you, the common thread is literally strip away, take everything away. If you mute it and you don't miss it, it doesn't need it, kind of thing, and just keep doing that. Is that something that you think of too? And is that something that's part of your process?
Yeah, it is. And it's funny, it almost like blurs both the boundaries of designing and life, and what I was saying with like simplification. And maybe even just being, back in my architecture days, like we would refer a lot to like the modernist architects, and like all of their ideologies was about stripping things back, like getting rid of like the unnecessary things. Like, and if we're talking in the design sense, that's like basically how I design anyway, is like getting rid of what doesn't need to be there. What are the few clean lines and shapes and gestures, the minimal amount of moves that I need to make something read and be as powerful as it can be as possible, and what doesn't need to be there, what doesn't matter. So yeah, like I'm always thinking in life and architecturally and design wise like that. What can I remove to make things read really clearly and really simply? And I often find myself constantly trying to level up when I do a design. And sometimes I almost kick myself because I'm then trying to do too much. And I'm like, why is this design not looking great? It's because I'm overthinking, I'm overcomplicating it, I'm putting too many things in there. And I always find myself having to get rid of unnecessary moves and gestures and shapes and objects, and just pulling it back to something that is minimal and clean and easy to read and understand.
That particular exercise, do you enjoy it? Because it can be frustrating as well, but what's your relationship with it?
Yeah, I think I get frustrated when I realize I've gone too far in something and I've added too much visual noise, and I realize that I need to sometimes refer back to my initial sketch and my initial idea, and just that little section drawing that I did, that is, like for Alien Romulus, if we think about like the corridor, the hive, like it's just these two leaning lines, like that's all it needs to be. Like, and then as you add the resolution and you keep the integrity of that big bold gesture, like that's all it needs to be. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that. Like that, for me anyway, ends up being the most powerful designs or scenes in movies and things anyway. I just think of Blade Runner 2049, like clean shapes, spaces, designs, like that's all it needs to be.
So let's talk some of the examples. Blade Runner 2049, I was literally thinking about that. Maybe because obviously we was talking in the build up to this conversation, I was thinking inspirations, and it just drifted in my mind. And I love that film anyway. But what kind of recent inspirations? Because remember when we last spoke on the podcast, I asked you then as well. So some time has elapsed. What inspirations, whether the inspirations are just like, I guess, standards of just quality design or examples that you just look up to and just want to just slow clap everything for?
In recent times, like I'm just thinking off the top of my head, is like definitely what lit a fire again was seeing the work done for Fantastic Four, First Steps. Like just seeing like some mid-century modernism get done right, and also just be applauded. And like I think I was so happy to see like minimal architecture just get the round of applause that I think it deserves, like in this day and age, and like seeing something like contemporary, that really inspired me, because as you've seen, like I've done some mid-century modernist pieces in the past, so it was nice to see some minimal stuff on screen, because as we know, like things can get very noisy and visually complex, and they just become like a headache to look at. So that was a breath of fresh air. I think we spoke about it last time, so I am repeating one, but like I can't help but think again, because I had a second season of Severance. Like I just love like the spaces and the way they make you feel. Like I still feel like that is just at the moment in the contemporary setting, that is the visual epitome of like just good design, storytelling, and evoking emotion and feeling. I think like if you muted that film, like you would just get certain feelings.
Totally agree. And just a bit of a I guess Severance, appreciate also Fantastic Four. I still need to do a deep dive on all the work that I'm seeing. I'm still only seeing what's shown up on my social media feed, but I totally agree with you. When I saw all the work on there, especially like obviously from my angle is vehicles was my doorway into things. It's just like, yes, like this take is so refreshing, perfectly put. And I guess that's like another thing we can chat about later, is just like why things become refreshing and how to kind of like target that. Because it's a great, I guess, like design hack as well. Like if you're looking for inspiration, well, just think of like, well, what could refresh the things that we're looking at, and then kind of go in that direction. But Severance in particular, that's another show. We was talking about shows before we jumped on. That's one show that I just absolutely adore so much, for the storytelling, just for the adventure that you take on, but visually as well. Like I think there's something that creatives always appreciate is visuals done really well, whatever that is, whether it's on for a second, half a second, whatever influence it gives. Maybe I'm being romantic about this, maybe I'm being very like biased, but there's just something about how that show is, how it looks. There's not a single thing that is out of place, but also there's not a single thing that is there that is unnecessary.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Like there's almost like this haunting element to like the minimalism of the film, and I think that's what creates that feeling. Like I always think of the corridors, and it's like I love deep diving into these things. Like maybe to the average person, it's just like, there's this white corridor, but when we put on our creative brain and our designer hat, like if you really unpack that, and I do unpack that in the course actually with Severance, is really break down those white corridors. Like, look, there's no windows, so there's no view to the outside world. Like the wall panels look like doors, so you can't see the difference between a door and a wall panel. And just those little clever decisions really make you feel uncomfortable. Like you feel trapped with those characters in that space. And it's just like that stuff is what inspires me. Like I love getting into the deep thinking behind why somebody created something. And when I can analyze a frame or a set and find those little gold gems, like I just get excited, and I just want to create that kind of feeling in my own designs or on projects that I'm going to be on.
Which other recommendations would you give us, at least just in terms of, I guess, interiors and great design in general, would you recommend for us to at least check out or just study?
So obviously the ones that I mentioned, like I won't go into the ones that we spoke about last time, like Dune. Like I think Dune is just like the design of that too, like really speaks to, good design thinking, like practicality, architecture, feeling like it's from a place and has a specific purpose. I got to go back to like one of my first inspirations, which was 2001: Space Odyssey. Like that inspired me before I even wanted to become a concept artist, when I even knew what a concept art was. Like, because I was fascinated by, again, the minimal design gestures that made me feel a certain way. Like, when Dave's on the bed in the end and he's looking at the black monolith and he's in this classical room, with beautiful ornament. But just the decision to remove that floor and make it an LED lit up screen all of a sudden makes you question, where is he? Like, what is going on? Like, you thought for a second maybe he was back on Earth or in reality, but he's in this weird space just because the floor changed and there's a black clean monolith in front of him. Like, I love those minimal gestures that, again, like make something feel otherworldly or haunting. And I think you can just learn a lot from that movie. Even again, I think talk about this in the course, but I'm thinking about the Hilton Hotel in space, in Space Odyssey, and you immediately understand where you are when the characters are just sitting there on these red chairs, and there's this subtle curve to the floor, and you understand that you're in this big rotating spaceship or space station just because of that subtle curve in the floor. If that floor was straight, like, you might be confused, like, we're in space, but like, wait a second, are we now back on Earth? Are we in a normal space? But it just creates that irregularity and things that we're not used to seeing that make us question? And where are we in this story?
2001. So Kubrick in general, and just thinking about space, and we were speaking about Severance just a second ago. I don't think of all the films, I don't have seen all his whole library, but none of his films give me comfort, especially with the spaces that he shows in there. They very like psychologically scar me. I guess in a viewer sense, that's what you want. That's what he's going for. 2001. I remember when I first watched that, there was something unsettling about this sci-fi. There's obviously sci-fi like so when you think of space, whenever I see like just anything that's like, you know, just I guess real, like NASA stuff or whatever, when you listen to the documentaries and what have you, how they speak about the harshness of space, like you only really get it from how they say, like, you know, you go outside, you're dead. Everything's like just so fragile over there. And I think in general, with sci-fi in general, only because obviously it's a film set and we want to see actors move around and be expressive, sci-fi is kind of like all our spaceships are made to feel like kind of safe or whatever, because, you know, it's a film set. But then things like 2001 still makes you feel like I don't want to be here kind of thing. Obviously how the film plays out, just the way he uses symmetry, the way he frames things, the lighting, all that kind of stuff. It's like, even the monolith, for example, just the contrast of that, you know, in like in the desert, for example, is something unnerving about that as well. Oh, yeah.
Sorry, you just froze for a second then, but we're back.
Okay, cool. So yeah, but other ones, obviously The Shining, for example, that is just purely psychological warfare in terms of like how it scares you and stuff. Even Eyes Wide Shut, the that mansion scene, and obviously the way it's shot and the way it's lit and everything, and obviously the fact that people's, you know, all masked up and stuff, that is also very unsettling. So, and obviously speaking to yourself, in the course you speak about spacing, and I guess we can segue into your architecture journey as well. But how much, and you, again, even the way you're describing 2001 in the sets just a moment ago, how much does psychology play into, on the conversation you have with psychology of spaces, play into the way you come up with design solutions?
So like that's one of the biggest things for me is the psychology of a space. Like how can architectural proportions and gestures make you feel a certain way? And that, again, going back to the alien experience, that really helped me think in that way too, because I was quite used to creating beautiful spaces before that, because as an architect, you're designing beautiful spaces. In reality, you're not trying to design somebody's house and make it feel uncomfortable. So the beautiful thing about concept design and bringing that architectural brain into the entertainment industry is you can start to do the opposite. You can start to make people feel uncomfortable, people feel like they've got weight on their shoulders, make people feel like they're trapped or they're compressed and they're about to, you know, come into something dangerous, or they're about to face their fears. Like, you can use architecture to really help tell that story. And that's like what I'm super passionate about, is proportions and gestures can dictate a mood and a feeling. And that's what I'm always trying to create. And a whole nother layer on top of that is I'm always then trying to think about how can architectural gestures like lead the eye to what is important into a story. Like, because at the end of the day, like, most of the focus is always on the characters. So how can you as a designer help reinforce the ideas that the director is trying to, or the story the director is trying to tell?
So let's jump into the course. Interior concept design. What are your motivations for this curriculum that you've cooked up for the students, and what are you hoping to teach students?
So the biggest thing for me is I want to show students, especially ones that are more newer to the industry, I want to show them what it's like to work on a real production. So just going off of what we were talking about earlier, I want to just expose them to the way that I have experienced working on a film. Like, yes, all different projects are going to be different, and you're going to be working with different directors and different clients. But I just want to, show them what what I've gone through and how I've experienced working with a production designer. And that's why a big part of this course as well is going to be getting a specific brief from a production designer and getting a specific set of references and sketches that you have to go by rather than just coming up with your own brief. And to further emulate that process, I want students to get used to making changes to your design. So you're going to come up with this, whatever your first proposal is, but then you're going to get hit in the face with, you need to make some changes to your design now. So we're creating a fictional simulation of what it's like to work on a feature film. So students will have to then make their changes, get used to making those changes, and keep developing your design, I guess, until it's essentially approved. The other thing that I want is I didn't want this course to also just be like, follow me in Blender to design a space. Like, yes, that's obviously a big part of it. People want to see how at the end of the day you create this cool looking space. But I want to give everybody an insight into those 10 years of architecture, compress what tools and techniques I learned and developed over those years, and almost like streamline it and just give it to you as a package. So you can almost cut the corners of having to go through the 10 years of architecture that I did and see how I design a space. And, from things like, lining things up and how to lay out spaces and how to use plan and section tools to help you get started, and to think about the flow of a space from both the top view and the side view, and keep things quite, minimal, and keep your moves intentional. They're the things that I really want to show. And another layer on top of that is also the things that maybe don't get spoken about enough. So how to be a professional, how to present your work, how to talk to a client. Like, I'm even going to show my presentations that I've done, for example, on something like Alien, and how I presented the project, how I did my very first presentation. I want to show people all of that stuff.
The way you've included that all in the course, and the way you've structured it, and the way you've made it all nicely balanced, I gotta congratulate you on that, because
Thank you.
There's a lot of topics there, and they each require a lot of time to invest in order for them to be useful to you. At least how to navigate those kind of things. And I obviously mentioned to this the other day, like, so regular listeners will know, my thing is mainly vehicles. And I'm always intrigued when I see a course that is very different from my own skill set, because it really, and obviously one thing for the course as well, like, it is good for anybody who's completely new to this, or equally does this anyway and just wants to perfect things further. But yeah, so like, seeing it from something that I don't have very little expertise on, it's always great to know that someone's kind of like, and this is how I felt with the course, and it's a bit abstract to describe it, but it's like someone's got your back for each step. So you kind of like push the student out there, say, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. But then at the right time, you come in with a callback, or how to kind of like make sure things are on the right track, and how that also continues with the other themes as well. Like, what I really appreciated is that section where you said how to present stuff. And not only just like the finished piece, but even from the very initial stage as well, like the sketches and how to be strategic with it as well. There's a lot of strategy in this course, and linking it back to what you said when you started working in films, for example, and the imposter syndrome, and seeing that, oh no, there's steps that are organic that everybody goes through, and it's not just like, this amazing elite thing. And this kind of decodes and demystifies all of that kind of stuff. And even if you're still unsure, you could just follow what you've put and just follow those steps as well. Like communicating with the art director, communicating with the project, and we'll dive into this a little bit as well. But how to mentally handle a project, like feedback and what to anticipate as well. And I think that that's very important to mention. Why did you put that in there though? Like, why did you feel that you needed to let people know not only how to work on a project, but how to maneuver and how to communicate on a project as well?
I think I just wanted to break that fourth wall, and especially I started doing this course right after Godzilla Kong Supernova. So all of this information that I wanted to share was super fresh, and I really wanted to share my experience through a course. I just felt that, yeah, it was just really important. Again, like we were talking about earlier, just so people can almost relax a little bit, and just show them, like, what first sketches actually look like for me anyway on a project, and just to show everybody that, it's something gradual. Like, you're not going to get something approved from the start. Like, it's a back and forth relationship with your production designer or director until you get to the end, and it's approved. Yeah, so I just wanted to take people on that journey.
And even though things like when you're preparing the concept for delivery, you already mentioned things like, we don't need to go too far into this because we're going to get notes anyway. We're going to get feedback. And it was almost like not only just to remind us, but you're kind of reminding yourself, like, not to kind of like go a bit too further, because eventually we're going to have to either redo this, or you're kind of anticipating that we're going to have to tear this whole section down or what have you. So is that something that you've experienced on jobs?
Yeah. And I think to also, to go back to the question that you just asked before, the whole point of that is to remember that we're doing this because, well, for me anyway, and a lot of people I've spoken to, like, you want it to be your job. So you don't want to just present one beautiful piece of artwork and be like, hey, Nick, this is great. Job's done. You worked for 3 days and you're kicked off of a job. Like, you're there to be a part of a collaborative process. Like, you're there to go back and forth with somebody, with the client, to help them realize their vision. So our job is a problem solver. Like, we're there to help them solve their problems, and we're there to do the things that the production designer doesn't have time for. So yeah, that was like a big motivator for the way that I structured the course.
Also, I got to give you a shout out on the way you kind of like explain some of the jargon in that industry, concept art versus concept design. That's going to be one of the most elegant explanations I've seen in all these years, and it just makes sense. And alongside, and these are some of my highlights as well, is obviously we start off, we see everything, we do some work, and then your checklists come back out, or your notepad, and breaking things down and kind of like deconstructing or just checking off things that we need to do as well. Is that a process, or was that something just done for the course just to help students, or is that part of your way of working in general?
Yeah, a bit of both. So like something I do, like, when over the years, as I've found my way or my footing in the industry, and I've come across things that have worked, like, I need to write it down, and sometimes even put it on my wall or put it on a little whiteboard that I've got, like things like my 6 principles to, creating good design, for whenever I get stuck. Like, I write that down, I put it on a wall, so that whenever I'm on a new project, and again, I've got nerves, overwhelmed, I can look at that, stick to that, and it keeps me on track. So I wanted to introduce, like you said, these little checklists that I use and give them to students, so that if they find them useful, they can use them for wherever they get stuck. But I also just felt it was important to just take breaks in the course and through the design process, to people to just remind themselves of what they're doing and why they're doing it. And I think it's just nice to have lists of like key reminders that you can just go through. Have I done this? And just tick it off, because that's the way that I work anyway. Like with my sketchbook, like when I get a task and I've got something to do, I'll write a very simple checklist. And that way I can kind of like really just stick to the task at hand and make sure that I'm doing everything and I'm going to deliver everything that the client has asked for. And again, I think that's one of the biggest parts of being a professional. And on top of that, as you've seen, I wanted to introduce also checklists that would make people check themselves with like do you really want to be like a concept artist or designer? Like, I want to ask people those hard questions, because like I truly believe that, you know, you've got to put everything into this. Like, you can't just do this because it looks cool or looks fun from the side. Like, you have to be a person that is so passionate about creating that you will not stop until you either make it into the industry, or whether you're already in the industry and you want to just keep working on cool projects, whether it's for yourself or for a client. Like, you have to be passionate about this. Like, you can't just do this as a side hustle. Like, if it's a side hustle, that's great. Like, create your art that makes you happy. But if you want to be on a production, like, yeah, you have to really invest all of your energy and time into this to make it work.
So that particular ingredient, from yourself in particular, and just generally from your observations, if that evaporated tomorrow, how much of an impact would it make on your work? Like, how much would we lose?
Yeah, so I think it was in the course too, but I asked that question to the students and myself, like, if the industry evaporated, like, would you still design or create? And for me, the answer is yes. Like, I would. And that's the whole point of what I was saying. Like, that's the way you have to feel in order to work in the space. Like, if it evaporated, you should still be wanting to create and design. And yeah, I always have created. Like, I think we spoke about in the last podcast, when I was growing up, it was either do something that I could draw for a living or be an athlete. Like, I've always drawn since a young age and always created. Like, that just puts me in my flow state and my happy space. So if it died, I would be devastated, because like, I love what I do. But I would still be creating, because there's just that itch that I have to scratch. And I think it's just a part of who we are as humans, we're wanting to create.
And what I also love as well is, and this is how you showcase your process in the course, and that's something that I really pay a lot more attention to now, or I'm going to pay more attention to now in my own process, is like, that creative energy is there, and it can be very potent at times, but it can also get out of control. And you can just put a lot of energy into things that in places that don't need to be. And that's something that you always like call back to a lot in the course as well. Like, I like this, but we don't need to spend too much time on this. Let's keep moving forward. Let's keep going on. And obviously there's a conveyor belt element in the course, in the image as well. It's kind of like keeping the conveyor belt moving, right? We don't need to keep stopping it. It's almost, you're kind of on this process as well. But at the same time, the way you question the process, the way you question the student, the checklists, all that kind of stuff, it does keep things in control. Like, you stay in your lane and you keep you know where you're headed. Like, you know what your goal is. And I think that is going to be one of the things that I predict is going to stick with students for a long, long time, especially the ones that are going to take this, who are either completely new to creating interiors, or they just want to create interiors, and this is going to help them formalize things as well. This is something we spoke about before, where there's certain lessons or workflows or just bits of advice that have always stick with you. And I think this is definitely going to give something fundamental to people to be able to just tackle things. And I always tend to, like, you know, my brain always floats into like abstract places, and this is definitely stuff that just can apply to anything. So where did this come from for you? Is that something that you've had to work on? And equally, there's a lot of things that we have, traits that we have, we don't even recognize, but we just do them. When did you kind of recognize that about yourself as well?
Yeah, I think it's definitely just a part of my makeup, but also just through experience on working on so many projects from over the past few years. Like, I constantly need to check myself to make sure I'm not doing anything unnecessary, but also just because, like, I'm always going to anticipate that things will need to change, and I'm just a person that is very systematic in my approach. So I like to, like, it's a tricky one. Like, sometimes you don't want to future-proof yourself too much so that you become really, hesitant in your design process, and you're too afraid to make decisions. So that's why like, yeah, it can work against you, but I feel like the system that I've developed like allows me to still, be bold with my design decisions, and allow me to keep moving forward. But I've developed a process that allows me then to not go too far back to make changes that I know are going to happen. And that's something that I want to put into the course too. Like, how can you maximize your efficiency and your workflow to allow you to test your ideas and move forward and not be afraid to make certain gestures, but also just almost like future proof yourself that you can go back if you need to.
Future proofing. That's definitely a nice segue into the next question. Back in 2020, even a little bit before that, I guess the workflow and deliverables that concept designer would need to offer or give were maybe a bit more simplified. Like, show us the image, show us maybe some views and some dimensions, and that's all that's needed. And the way things, I guess, modern concept art now, like, there's not only that, you can give 3D files, which is something that you famously did in Romulus. You can do walkthroughs, you can show animations, and that's something that you also show in this course that students can do to sell the design, to sell how the space works. When did that start happening, and why do you feel like that's needed to show nowadays?
I feel like it's just going to make you more valuable. And especially in this day and age where like 2D image creation is at literally the click of a button. Like, it's more important than ever to show from an architectural sense that you can think holistically about a space and you can think, beyond the 2D frame. And that's when I realized that back in the earlier days, 2020, when I went back to my architectural roots and I embraced my architecture skills, which were heavily reliant on 3D. And when I would show clients 3D models, and at that time they weren't expecting that, to see a director's reaction when you just, hey, look at this on my second screen, let me share my screen, let's walk through the model, and to see how they reacted to that and saw how valuable that was something that I realized, oh, I should do this on all of my projects, because it's just showing them that, you're not just cheating, so to say. Like, you can think about something that at the end of the day is probably going to become like a built set. So yeah, for this course, I want to try and teach students how to become more valuable as a designer and as a thinker, and to not just think that what we do now is a nice, pretty 2D image. Like, you can think about, function and different spaces, and how all these different spaces flow together, and how different sets interlock and how they work together. Like, yeah, that's something that I'm really passionate about, and something that has worked for me on projects that I've been on. And I just want to, pass that on and help other students that maybe haven't thought in that way to kind of level up their skills.
And this is, again, we spoke about recently as well, offline, is there's a lot in the course in a good way. So if you just want to take only a certain element of it, you can take that, do what you need and carry on. But there's all these, not additional things, but there's all these different kind of, like, I guess, spaces you can kind of work on, or aspects you can work on, like, just for example, adding moving elements or just walkthroughs and all that kind of stuff, just to show off the design even more. Equally, you can double down more so on just the cross sections and all that kind of stuff. Anything that will help you just to enhance things further, which I think is great, because every project is different, right? Some product designers and production designers and directors will want to see certain things. In your experience on the projects that you've had, is there a common thread that everybody kind of wants to see? And equally, are there certain things that you've only noticed certain projects wanted, and in other projects it wasn't needed at all?
Yeah, well, I found the opportunities throughout projects as they progressed over time. Like, I found that when I went out of my comfort zone of just presenting a nice image and throwing in a plan or a section or an isometric view, it showed value to the art department, and all of a sudden it gave me more tasks to do and kept me on projects even longer. So that's something that I then developed, that I wanted to just include in my workflow on a, feature film productions. Again, every project's different, but I found it to be a common thread, and it's only been becoming more and more useful through the different films that I've worked on since Alien. Like on Godzilla, I was designing this huge set, and once they had seen that I'd been doing these plans and these sections, they're like, "Oh, Nick, can you lay this out on stage 7? And now can you lay this set out that you've designed on stage 5? We're trying to plan out which stage we should build this set on." And then it's like, "Hey, Nick, can you take, now that we're going to have it on stage 7, we're in a fire hazard zone. So can you take a meter out of each side of the design?" And it just changes the whole design. And all of a sudden you have to redesign the whole thing. And you're going through that back and forth process in a completely different way that isn't just all about the aesthetics and the look of your concept art or your concept design. Like you're getting into a whole nother level of thinking and depth. And that just excelled. And when people saw to the millimeter of what I was designing in my concepts, that by the end of it, I was laying out like LED screens to the specifications, basically what a set designer would do for, these big, huge spaces to make it, to just make it work for the art department so they could build this set. So I ended up being on that project for the longest that I've been on any project, because I showed that I had all of these different skills and tools to provide and make myself of more use to the team than just being a concept artist. It's almost like this bridge. I found this bridge between being a concept artist and a set designer. That's what I've been doing.
I absolutely love that. And so that's also like a very different dynamic than I guess the traditional setup, which is, to put it bluntly, make this look like a cool image that we can aspire to build, right? To almost give us the actual instructions to build this actual thing. But building things for a stage, building things to be an actual set, and obviously those conversations of things that are completely beyond the script, right? Like this is a fire hazard, now we've got to kind of adjust things.
Yes.
How do you relish that kind of conversation, that dynamic?
Yeah, I think it's just the natural problem solver in me. And I think it's just a hangover from my architecture days. I've found over the years, and as I've questioned, what I like and what I don't like, I actually really do like just when somebody presents me with a challenge and a problem and I have to solve it. That's when I can get into my flow state. That's when everything else gets blocked out and I have to resolve it. That's all I can think about. So I do really relish that. But don't get me wrong, like what you said, at the end of the day, what we have to do first and foremost is to make it look cool. That's the production designers I've worked with. It's just make it look fucking cool. They literally say that. But then once you've done that job and you can then get into this next level of problem solving is a really rewarding aspect too. And it keeps things fresh. You can get quite burnt out, just producing beautiful images and beautiful drawings and designs all the time. It's kind of a nice thing to transition into this more technical side of concept design and breaking things down and how they're going to work and how they're going to build it. And, things aren't going to fit on certain stages. Sets have to get smaller. I like to get my hands on that stuff.
And for students taking the course, is there enough in there for them to also be able to deliver the same kind of solutions on their own film sets when they get those gigs?
Yeah, absolutely. Because what you're going to be doing is resolving your space. You're not going to be cutting any corners. Something I'm super passionate about too is realistic scale, again, from my architecture days. But again, what I've found has worked in the entertainment industry, because realistic scale, even if something's not going to be built and it's going to be VFX or it's an animation project, scale is what makes something believable. So I'm trying to really drill that knowledge and almost give cheat sheets on that too to students so they can get their head around and almost create muscle memory of, what size a door is or a bench or a seat. So they don't have to think about those things. And that stuff is going to make your sets much more believable. They're not going to be oversized if they don't need to be. All of your design decisions are going to be intentional. Things are going to be to, realistic dimensions, which inherently make something more buildable.
So you've had the experience of walking through something that you've designed in real life? Obviously, as an architect, I guess that was the norm anyway, right? Like you could just literally walk through what you built. But
Yep.
what was that experience like, especially for something that's meant to be fictional?
Yeah, that was really surreal because, like you said, like I've spent my time in my architecture days walking through a finished building, and that's one of the most rewarding aspects of a project. But to see something like fictional and sci-fi built is yeah, a whole nother level of surreal. Because too, like in architecture, you're a part of like a massive machine, and you are in film too. But we're not, unless you're the head architect, you're not really designing that much. So on a film, like you kind of are sometimes like, the main designer. Like for me, like the lab was like pretty close to what I did. The hallway was almost dead on to what I did. So seeing all of these little 3D decisions that I made and like come into reality was like an overwhelming feeling, because it almost made me realize that the design gestures that I proposed worked in reality. And it made me understand that, almost to back myself even more in the future. But then you just carry on this whole another set of knowledge and details that you saw in a real set that you can carry on to your next work. So walking through these sets, seeing this whole another layer of additional information that the art department has added to your design, it's almost like this goal that then you can carry on into your next project.
What were the surprising things, if any, that you picked up on whilst seeing the set built, and obviously something that you designed as well? Like, were you kind of like, did it give you more questions, or like, oh, that's something that I can work on next time because I didn't think that's how it's going to look on screen, so I can definitely work on that. Equally, did you see more kind of like errors in your design, if that makes sense? Like, okay, I should have, kind of like fixed that up a bit more because I didn't think it would be so prominent.
Yeah, there was like a few things in the Romulus lab that were like, oh, I put that in like a last minute little 3D blobby thing that I made, and it pretty much got built
Yeah.
in the end. So like, I think realizing that those little decisions that you're going to make, because of production is such a fast moving pace and fast moving machine, that there's sometimes just got to go with what you've done. So it made me realize that, ooh, maybe in the future, if I am going to completely resolve a space, I do have to make sure that the things that I've done, like I'm just personally happy with, because at the end of the day, those little decisions might end up being built because somebody might not have time to overthink and re-detail like certain elements of a set because it has to, be done by a certain deadline. But alternatively too, like realizing the mistakes I made, and I wouldn't even call them mistakes, just like lessons, is when spaces that I proposed initially were just too big. Like that was a good realization too. Like, I think in the concept art world, like we can get carried away with wanting to just create things that are bigger and better. And I've almost gone in the opposite direction since then and understand that small is good. And that is like human scale is more important than ever. So yeah, I've really tried to check myself with when things don't need to be as big as they need to be. And we were talking about this offline too, but it was almost comforting then to hear someone like on the art department podcast, Feng Zhu, talking about how much time in movies do you actually see these big epic environments? Like not that much. And like, it's going to be very rare. There's only a handful of people that really get to design those things. Like a lot of the time a movie is set with like the characters and they're in like a smaller space. So I think it's like, if you're interested in architecture and interiors, like I think making things smaller if necessary and not having to over design things can be really important, because most scenes and characters are always set in these like smaller, realistic, human-sized environments.
Do you feel that is more of an epiphany for yourself and a kind of like design route or philosophy you're going to follow moving forward, or a trend?
No, I think it's definitely not a trend. Like I think again, it's all based on my experience, but I just see like that common thread happening on projects, and especially working with like the same production designer like several times, like Naaman Marshall, who I worked with on Alien, I worked with him on Godzilla Kong. And on Godzilla Kong, I got to be in more meetings and hear him talk to the art department more, like the art directors and the set designers. And being a fly on the wall made me realize things even more of what someone like him is after. Like he's like telling the art directors, like, I want thick expressed joints in the concrete. I want texture variation. Like I want to see the bolts and the rivets. Like hearing him say that stuff again is gold, because I'm going to include that stuff in my designs in the future, and again, make myself more valuable. And at the end of the day, I like doing that stuff anyway. Like I like getting into that detail and adding that extra layer of information to make something feel real, believable, and like Naaman would always say, like, let's get something feeling like real architecture. Like at the end of the day, when we're working on a movie, like we're trying to create that suspense of disbelief. We want to make people believe what they're watching. So I think real world details, real world scale, real world architecture, for me anyway, is really important.
And obviously you've answered this to me before in private, but just for the listeners, why interiors in particular for yourself?
I didn't come up with this term, but it made me really, it really resonated with me. It was like architecture is a canvas for our everyday lives. Like I like to think about architecture, it's a container for spaces and memories. Like a dining table is where information and memories are shared between, you know, family and friends. Like it's can get quite like poetic, but it's true. Like you can trace certain memories back to certain spaces and places you've been in. And then in film, it's the same thing. Like you remember certain scenes or spaces or where like a key moment of a story happened. And like, I feel like they're the things that just inspire me. Like I just want to create, you know, spaces that create memories for other people. And at the end of the day, like I was inspired by spaces in films to create and become a designer. And I want to now be like a person that can inspire others to create spaces and new memories as well.
Sick. Of the projects that you've worked on and the workflow taught in the course, which ones closely follow those kind of jobs?
Definitely Alien Romulus and Godzilla Kong Supernova, especially since that was, again, like it was in April. I finished on Godzilla and I rolled, I think it was a crossover with Learn Squared anyway, and that's what I kind of based the course off of. So it follows those two projects very closely because they were sets that got built at the end and were pretty close. Like if you think of Alien Romulus, the sets that the concepts that I designed became very close. The sets became very close to what I did in the conceptual stage. But Godzilla Kong, like we're three years later, I've gained so much more knowledge and experience that the sets on that film were like to another level of in terms of involvement. Like I went from Alien having 2 sets built to Godzilla Kong having like 7 or 8 things being built and having like being able to do pretty much 90% of the architecture on that whole film and being a part of some super expensive sets. So that's definitely closest to that. And I've tried to put everything that I learned from that film into this course so that it's as realistic as possible for students who wanted to design interiors.
And whenever, I guess, we all take a course, especially when it's like, say, to a specific visual. So in this case, we've got like a futuristic kind of like sci-fi lab, right? Or, but at the same time, different projects have different briefs. People have different kind of like tastes and want to explore things, and you do offer something that in the course as well through the different level difficulties. Where we have what I like to call like the and I think you referred to that as well, the James Bond kind of like environment, like that kind of scene that would definitely be fitting in any kind of like espionage movie. Equally, You got like a control room as well. How, and obviously that's evident in itself, where you can see how you can apply the workflow into different kind of like styles and looks. But just from your perspective, how easy or yeah, how easy would it be for students after taking this course to be able to apply it to any kind of interior?
Yeah, so that's the hope and the intent. The intent is that I want to set students up to understand what good proportions and architectural gestures are, and how basically different forms and shapes evoke certain moods and feelings. And I think if you can get your head around that, and with sketching a plan and a section and understanding, you know, the flow of a space, like you got to think that's the bones of the architecture. So that's at the start, that's all that matters. And that's the way, for me anyway, I like to approach any brief. So the style almost at the start, like the aesthetic, shouldn't be a concern. And that's why there's 3 different briefs, because this methodology should be the same for each brief. And then when you get into the references and, you know, start to look into the materials and the finishes and the specific story requirements, that will start to naturally and organically form the different aesthetic. But the groundwork is all in those architectural proportions and gestures, and they can be applied to any style of architecture that there is. Because I like to think that, you know, we're architects, we're organizers of spaces, and how spaces flow together and how spaces feel through simple lines and simple shapes and simple gestures. So I hope that, yeah, that comes through clearly in the course, and that people feel confident to tackle any sort of style. Because the aim too is that if people really want to build like an architectural concept design portfolio, and they want to be a part of real set builds, that you can come back over time and do the other 2 different briefs and other styles, so that you can show that you can tackle any style and any brief that comes your way, because you're just good at designing interiors. So I just want people to have that feel like they can take on that diversity.
Speaking of just spaces in general, and throughout the course, it's particularly what I really enjoy, and I remember I saw this on your Gumroad, this is something I picked up as well, and obviously seeing just your career grow over the years and how you communicate yourself on social media, and you could tell like how people communicate what they really value, whether they are explicit about it or just it's more subliminal, but you can kind of just tell what people like, or what they hunt for. And then with the course, it's what's very comforting, in a strange way to explain it, is how controlled the whole project is, with enough scope to still explore, but without kind of like losing your grip on the brief and losing your grip on just being able to execute to its best. And even from the blackout stage, although there are changes and you can see how the design evolves, I'm still very like it just felt like a very nice, elegant time lapse of just seeing these spaces evolve from their blocky shapes to what it is in the end. Even to the end, when you kind of like mess things up a little bit to make it more lived in, it's like you've seen these kind of like shapes and these corners go from nothing to become this space that's almost lived in and now has, you could say, even lore, and it's all part of the script, for example. But how you talk about spaces in particular and the experience of them, how they flow into different places and fit together, the way you show with different renders or different camera views of the set, although we know it's the same place, and I've definitely experienced this in just whether it's like a hotel lobby or any kind of place I've been to, certain parts of a room or a house or a place do give you kind of different vibe. So when we're sitting on the lounge by the windows, when you see the set from that angle, it looks different versus the kitchen, versus obviously where the conveyor belt thing is as well. And that is definitely a masterclass in how to exploit different kind of spaces and things like that as well. So I just wanted to commend you on that, because that is definitely something that I'm going to pay way more attention to, even though it's just in vehicle design or other stuff in general.
Yeah, I think that was an important part. Like I've caught myself again, this is through my own mistakes that I've made in the past. Like sometimes I've looked back and I was like, I created this whole space and I showed like one view to the director and I didn't even show them that I had a 3D. But like, what's wrong with you? Like to myself, like I I've thought about this thing in a lot more depth. Like celebrate and take advantage of the amount of effort that you've put into something. And that's what I'm trying to teach with like having a resolve space is like show your design from different views. And also when you jump into a different view, you're also going to be presented with a new challenge. Like, does your design read clearly from that? Like, how do your shapes and your gestures read from a different perspective or point of view? Like, does your design need to be reevaluated? Do you need to make some subtle shifts to make the story read more clearly? And I think it's just a good practice to like move around and set up different camera views. Because at the end of the day, too, like, if something's going to be filmed, if they're going to build this big set, like, you want to give the director like an opportunity to explore themselves. And that's something that I've seen through experience as well. Like you can have a lot of influence in terms of what the possibility of what the shots could be in a film. Like if you present multiple views, a really resolved space, something that works from multiple angles, like you're almost giving inspiration for them and to, think about something that they hadn't thought about before, like taking a certain shot from a direction that they hadn't thought about before. Like you can have that influence. You can even like I've seen things where like I was blown away by there was some test footage with Alien Romulus with the Offspring, and the Offspring was in actually at one point when they were testing something in the slanted hallway hive that I did, and just seeing because the Offspring was so tall and the corridor was on such an aggressive slant, seeing the actor engage with the architecture was just like mind-blowing. Like you influenced the way that something was being tested and shot. So yeah, that's why I think it's important, and I want to pass on this knowledge of thinking of your spaces holistically and from different angles and different perspectives, because yeah, you're just giving yourself more influence and opportunity to make a difference in a film.
Let's talk tools. So there's a nice minimalist kind of like tools you use for this. We've got essentially Blender, which I don't believe you use any kind of plugins or add-ons, and Procreate pretty much. Was that specifically for the course, or is this your main go-to tool, workflow?
Yeah, it's just the way that I work. So I don't really use many add-ons. I don't at the moment. Nothing really necessary to speed up my workflow. So mostly Blender. Procreate is a hangover, but a hangover that I am glad happened, because when I was trying to get into the industry and I was working on my portfolio, I worked really far from home. So I didn't have the luxury of time to sit at a desktop or sit at a desk and draw away, on a Wacom tablet on Photoshop. So the iPad was a product of me trying to find all those nooks and crannies in my day to fit in some drawing time. So I could sit in my car, I could sit at a cafe and just keep sketching and keep working up images. And I've just found over time that I'd like that. Like I can still now go take the iPad instead of sitting at my desk on a professional project, and I can just paint over and work in a more comfortable space, because I just like to change up my environment. But yeah, anybody doing this course, they can use whatever they like. Like it's not about the tools. Again, it's all about the design and the design thinking. You can use whatever 3D software you want. You can use a Wacom tablet. You can use iPad. It's not going to make a difference. Like you should be using what you're comfortable with.
I remember when I was checking out the course, I was like, obviously, initial stages are for Procreate, iPad, cool, and then the iPad never went away. Like Procreate is there almost till the very, very end, and I found that myself. Like in certain things, I can do it on Photoshop or whatever, but it's just nice to send it over to the iPad, away from the workstation. You can take whatever you want and just kind of like, you got your stylus and you got the screen. Not even the keyboard, for example. So, like I said, it's a bit of a hangover, but do you kind of like find that it's strategic now, almost helpful, just kind of like being able to do things on an iPad in this kind of like minimal kind of like, device?
Yeah, like we were talking about with like getting rid of clutter. I feel like the iPad is almost embodies that as well. Like I like how minimal. Sound like I'm trying to sell an iPad now, but I just like It's like how simple it is, and like there's not too many. I used to get overwhelmed too with all of the different brushes in Photoshop and all of the different tools and settings. And it's like, at the end of the day, like I'm doing very minimal paint over work anyway. Like I just need like a clean set of a few brushes, nice clean canvas, not too many tools, and just the flexibility to like change my environment. Like again, the whole reason too that I went into this space is I didn't want to be chained to a desk like I was in my architecture days. I want to have freedom to move and change my environment so that I can enjoy what I do.
Final thoughts on the course regarding the student. What should they bring with them, whether it's an approach, a mentality, even kind of like a skill set to the course? And what would you personally, like them to take away from the course?
So I think you have to be someone that loves solving problems. Like I think, like I know we all want to create pretty images, but I think you just have to be passionate about design in general, and almost like have an itch to scratch with, resolving details and resolving how different spaces go together. Like you have to relish like thinking about the flow of different spaces and how spaces make you feel. Like I think you obviously need to be passionate or enjoy using 3D as well, because at the end of the day, like architecture is spatial, and we're going to be walking through our spaces and get a feeling for like how certain ceiling heights feel and how these different shapes make you feel, and are you putting certain functional requirements of the brief in the right positions. So I think you have to be passionate about thinking spatially or want to learn how to think spatially. And I think what I want students to get out of this course is to just feel like that they can tackle any architectural style that comes their way. And at the end of the day, like I want people to experience what I've been lucky to experience. And at the end of the day, I think we all want to see our stuff make it to the big screen or the small screen as close as possible to what we've designed. Like that's why we're in it. We want to show our family and friends. We want to take them to the movies and like, look, that's the set that I designed, and look at my name in the credits. So I want to hopefully get students to be able to be somebody that has their design or their set make it to the big screen. I think that would be really, really rewarding to see.
Just to recap, again, there's a lot of absolute gold in the course. And of course, that can be bias coming from me, but I'd highly recommend people to check it out and maybe tell me if that's the case or not. But we have obviously amazing design taught, how to communicate it, how to deliver it, technical skill regarding how to use current tools, and again, a very no nonsense kind of way. It's just you can literally pick up Vanilla Blender and just go, essentially. We also have ways to approach a project, not only in terms of how to structure your workflow, but even how to approach clients and that dynamic as well, which I think is absolutely valuable. And then you have ways to communicate your own design, whether it's firstly, I think, which is quite valuable as well, to yourself before anybody else. And you can literally make something from this course, add the annotations, and like I said, I very much envy the way you do arrows so naturally. That they're super cool. You should definitely do an arrow pack. I'm sure that would do very, very well. But you could like do that, annotate your sketch, leave it away for 9 years, come back to it, and it just tells you exactly what you need to do, what you're thinking as well. And then overall, you can obviously have this thing. It goes beyond from the actual image to an actual real life set if need be as well. If you just want to keep things digital, you can do that also. But I know obviously that's what we all love. To be fair, in the end, is you leave with something absolutely badass. That's just nice to look at as well. My favorite image from this course is that isometric shot that you've done. So satisfying to look at. It just generally just to look at as well. Like that is so cool, but it's so informative, and I think that's why I like it as well, because you get to see everything in kind of like one image as well. And yeah, and I think that sums it up. Like, you look at it, and at first when I saw it, I thought, oh, that's probably like in the early stages of the course. That's pretty much done right at the end, after everything's been built, after everything's been done. And even then, you can still find different ways to communicate this thing that you can literally zoom into every single angle of and make sense of it as well. So you've definitely cooked up a banger, and super excited to see what people do. So many more things we can talk about, and I'm sure we can do that in a future episode as well. We definitely won't leave it for many, many more years. But any final thoughts or words from yourself before we head off?
Yeah, I think, look, I'm just really passionate now. I feel like I've got just like this new purpose to like give back to students, that want to, be creatives for a living. So please feel free by all means to like ask me any questions. Like, I just want to help anybody and answer any of their queries and their thoughts. But yeah, I also just hope that you get everything that you wanted out of this course, because like I said in one of my Instagram stories, like I took 3 months off and decided to not take on any work to make sure that I created a course that wasn't rushed. And I really just want to pass on all of my thoughts and experiences and the knowledge that I've gained in the last few years, so that you don't have to go through the same struggles and questions that I did. Because I think a big part for me is I want to be that person that I didn't have back then, like when I didn't know any other concept artists or any designers, and I didn't know what the industry was like. So yeah, I want to be that bridge that can almost take away the nerves and to like help people, I guess, just realize their dream of just becoming like a professional designer and just get paid doing what you love to do.
Amazing, Nick. Thanks so much, and super excited for the course. Interior concept design is available now. Just hit the links, sign up for it. If you want to check out the course before you buy, the first lesson is free. And if you're getting this as soon as it airs, there's a nice juicy early bird discount for you as well. Nick, so glad we got this done. Thanks so much, dude.
Always a pleasure, Aaron. Thank you.
Cool, man. A massive thanks to Nick for another incredible conversation and episode. Hit the links to sign up for interior concept design today. And if you do sign up at the time this episode aired, then there's a juicy 40% early bird discount waiting for you. And if you want to check out the course before you buy, remember, all of our first lessons are free. I've been your host, Aaron Danda. Till next time.